Hi everybody, welcome to my channel, A Good Listen, where I sit here and I tell you about a recent Audible book that I've listened to in story format. And at the end of the video, I reveal the book where today's story has come from. So if you're a fan of horror, thriller, or mystery novels, or you just like hearing good stories told in those genres, then you come to the right channel because that's all I do, and I will be posting once or twice a month. So without further ado, let's get into today's story. A man worked at an admissions office at a particular university. And although he really didn't want to be at the admissions office on this particular day, and he really didn't enjoy his job being an admissions officer at this particular university, he preferred being at his job over being at home with his miserable, awful wife. At one point, he actually used to love being an admissions officer. He used to enjoy his job. But lately, with the new young adults that are coming into this university, the one thing that makes his job just horrible, dreadful, and why he really just doesn't like to be in this position anymore is reading all those awful, horrible admission papers to get into the university. In his opinion, the admission papers that he receives nowadays are awful, they're boring, they're lackluster, they're just they have no oomph, they have no personality, they have nothing that's special about them. They all sound manufactured. It almost sounded like in the admission papers, like everybody sounded the same. Nobody was unique. Nobody had their own voice. Nobody had their own personality. It was just the same admission paper over and over again with the same words, with the same pros and verbs and, skill sets and everything, just a different name on the paper. And that to him was boring, to read all those admission papers one after another, boring on top of boring on top of boring. One day when he was at work, he got so fed up, like so sick of reading these admission papers, that he decided he was done for the day. Like, he was cutting out of work early. He just did not want anything to do with these admission papers. He was fed up. He was done. His brain could not take any more of this awful admission papers. Like, it was just terrible to him. So the man decided to cut out early. But right before he was about to cut off early, he decided to just read one more admission paper. And it was this admission paper which caused him to sit back down in his seat, because when he was reading this admission paper, something about this admission paper caught his attention. And it actually was different. It sounded different. It had the personality. It had a unique voice. It didn't sound like any of the admission papers that he read that day, let alone that week, that month, none of the things. This right here was capturing his attention. It was interesting, and he was here for it. So he sat back down and he started to really engage and indulge himself in this one particular admission paper. This admission paper was so well written. It was so authentic. It was so amazing, so mesmerizing to this man that he was just captivated. He just could not take his eyes off the paper. Sam, the young man who wrote this amazing piece of work, not only was he able to get his stamp of approval, this admissions officer was just so captivated and mesmerized by his authenticity, his well-written piece of work, that he really just wanted to meet this young man. Like, he was so ready to just meet the person that wrote this beautiful admissions paper. Now, Sam only had mediocre grades, but his admission paper revitalized the admissions officer so much so that he was just like, I don't even care. Bring him in. I want him in here. Bring him in. I want him at this university. I need to meet this kid. So the admissions officer reached out to Sam. He schedules a time and a date to meet Sam, and he actually packs up his belongings and he heads out the door. He ends his workday, he heads out the door, and he goes home. He is so excited. Mind you, he and his wife, like I said before, he describes his wife as awful. Like, she's just an awful, awful woman. And he is so revitalized and just so excited about this particular admission paper that he is actually ready to go home and actually talk to his awful wife about this admission paper. And so that's what he does. He gets home and he is about to talk to his wife about this admissions paper. And as soon as he walked through the door and was going to tell his wife about this exciting new admission paper that he came across and that he was able to read, he was actually met with just a whole bunch of dirty looks, a lot of slurs and just belittlement and just a whole bunch of nagging and just degrading verbal abuse from his wife. And he just decided to keep all his excitement to himself and this admissions paper to himself. He and his wife relationship had been strained for a very long time. They do have a son together, a young boy that they have, and it kind of felt like their marriage was only hanging on for the child. At this point, the wife had kicked the admissions officer out of their marital bed, and he was currently sleeping on the couch, which he actually enjoyed because he didn't want to be anywhere near that wretched woman. And so their marriage was just not the best. Let's just keep it there. Although his awful life at home was just terrible, the day came where he was actually just revitalized with excitement again, because the day came where he was actually about to meet the young man who wrote that amazing admission paper, Sam. And so he was excited. So he got up ready to go. He gets to work and he's just ready to meet this amazing person who wrote this amazing piece of work. And he is so ready to meet Sam because he wants to ask Sam, like,
how did you come up with this mission paper? Like, how did you come up with the texture and the content?
Like, it's just amazing. He just had all these questions that he wanted to ask Sam. So he was really excited to meet Sam. However, when Sam came into the university and actually walked through his door, the admissions officer was kind of let down. In his mind, he had an image of what this amazing person must look like, who wrote this amazing essay. And Sam was the total opposite of what he had in his head of what this person looked like. He had in his mind like a person that he just knew would write this, like the type of person or type of student that would write something so deep and intense and just amazing. And he was met with the total opposite. Sam was overweight, he was expressionless, he was just kind of a dud. However, he was able to look past that, get over that really quickly, because his excitement and the burning questions that he had for Sam still were there. So Sam sits down, the admissions officer sits down, and they proceed with the meeting. And the admissions officer is asking Sam various questions throughout this meeting. And by the time the meeting came to a conclusion, he actually took note that the whole time that he's talking to Sam is expressionless. Like, he has no expressions. His voice is very monotone, very neutral and calm, and it just has no fluctuation or anything like that. And he also notices that Sam never blinked, like, ever, while he was, from the time that he actually walked through the door to the time that, like I said, this meeting was concluding, Sam never blinked. The admissions officer asked Sam one last question, specifically regarding the very last sentence of his admission paper. He wanted to know what the last sentence of his admission paper actually meant. When Sam actually answered the question, what the last line of his essay meant, the admissions officer was so horrified, so terrified, and creeped out about what he said and his answer, that he actually didn't believe him and asked the young man to repeat himself. And without any emotion on his face, in his tone, and again, without blinking, Sam goes through these horrific, gruesome details of a story that led him to write that last line in his admissions paper. Sam casually confessed to the admissions officer that he had murdered his grandmother. When the admission officer heard this, he really didn't know what to do with this information because that answer was far from what he expected. So he really didn't know what to do with this information. He didn't know if Sam was actually telling him the truth, that he really actually murdered his grandmother, or if he was just kind of confessing a fantasy that he wanted to murder his grandmother for some reason, given his strange and awkward behavior and mannerisms, that it might just be like a fantasy of his and he actually did not murder his grandmother. But the admission officer wasn't sure. Like, he didn't know what to do with this information. But either way, the admissions officer was totally creeped out about this confession, whether it was true or not. He was just creeped out. So the stunned admissions officer desperately wanted to change the direction of this conversation. He ended up looking at Sam's admission paper again, and he found another topic to talk about with Sam during this interview process. And so he asked Sam about the high school he attended. And Sam told the admissions officer that the high school he attended was inside the mental institution he was sent to after he was found covered in his grandmother's blood. The admissions officer was completely over this meeting and this interview and with Sam. The admissions officer ended up finding a way to sever the interaction with Sam, ending the meeting abruptly, and Sam ends up leaving the admissions officer's office. Now, as soon as Sam leaves, the admission officer takes his admission paper and puts it in the rejected pile. He wanted nothing to do with Sam and his awkward, strange, non-blinking ways. So the admission officer kind of calmed down, gathered himself, did some extra work, and he wanted to take a break from the work that he was doing. So he ended up turning around and looking out the window that was right behind his desk and his chair. He ended up turning around, looking at the window, and guess who was standing outside his window? Not like really close up to the window, but close enough to where you could see him. Was Sam. Sam was standing outside the admissions officer's window, staring at him, not blinking. So this again creeped the admissions officer out, and so the admissions officer quickly closed the blinds to his office. And as he's sitting there trying to figure out like what to do, because Sam is giving stalker vibes, like he's giving like unhinged, crazy vibes, and the admissions officer is kind of in a place where he's like starting to get scared, like afraid of this young man. And so one thing that he decides to do is research Sam. Let's see if he actually is crazy or someone to be afraid of, or maybe he's just, just a kid with a couple screws loose. So he ends up getting on his computer and starts doing some research, looking up Sam, and he is again terrified, horrified, and completely creeped out to find out that everything that Sam said was true. Sam actually did kill his grandmother and was sent to a mental institution for many years until his release. The worst thing that the admission officer discovered was why Sam killed his grandmother. Sam ended up butchering his grandmother beyond recognition because she refused to take him to the store. You heard me right. Let me just repeat it. Sam butchered his grandmother beyond recognition because she refused to take him to the store. Now, that reasoning alone, like the grandma just refusing to take you to the store, is crazy within itself, but it's even more terrifying and horrifying because the admissions officer just threw Sam's admission paper in the rejected pile. And Sam was standing outside his window the whole time he did that. So Sam saw the admissions officer throwing his admission paper into the rejected pile. And if Sam is willing to butcher his own grandmother beyond recognition because she refused to take him to the store, what in the world is Sam prepared or willing to do to a total stranger that also rejected him or refused to accept him? And if you want to find out what happens between Sam and this admissions officer and what happens between the admissions officer and his wretched old horrible wife. As always, I'm going to encourage you guys to read or listen to The Last Stare into oh goodness. The Last Stare into Darkness by Cliff Barlow. This is actually a catalog of 20 horrifying short stories, including today's story, that Cliff created, all captured into one book to creep you out and give you nightmares. Hopefully. If you guys enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe on your way out. It truly helps my channel out tremendously, more than you know. And the best part about it, it's free. If you have any story suggestions, please do not hesitate to leave them down in the comment section, or you can hit me up on any of my social media platforms. I do check my comments on all media platforms. So if you have any books that you would like to suggest to me for me to cover on this channel, if I like them and I enjoy them, I will cover them on this channel, and I will give you some credit for putting it out and directing me to all that goodness. If you want to follow me on any other of my social media platforms other than YouTube, I always list them in the description box below. So check me out on them. It's not I'm not everywhere like that. I'm not on 100 different platforms. I'm literally on 2 other platforms, you know, so you can find me. You know, I ain't hard to find out there in them social media streets. Okay, you can find me. Other than that, thank you guys so much for taking time out to hang out with me, and I will see you guys in my next one. Peace. Peace. Watch this. Hey.